Friday. Oh Lord, Friendship Friday.
That's what we normally call it.
It was about to be. It was about to be called Failed Friday. Okay. Uh, but thank you all so much for hanging in there with us. Please, please, please like and share. Forward. Text your girlfriend. Tell her that we are on live, and we are excited. Would love, love, love to share with you guys, and love for you all to share back with us. So be sure to put your comments down in the comment section. Okay. And because we definitely want to hear your point of view. So we are here with my girlfriend, Katrina Harris Earl, and Chrisette Ellis. We are here, you guys, and we're talking about something specific today because I know, first of all, that everybody that's in our audience and has dealt with grief. Everyone has dealt with grief and or will deal with grief at some point. And so we wanted to kind of talk about that because it's something that has really permeated throughout our Force of Friendship family recently. And as we all talk offline and amongst each other, you know, we are so concerned with how our girlfriends are doing, whether it's grieving the loss of a loved one, a family member, or a furry family member. It doesn't matter whether it's animal, chanimal, mammal, human, you know, whatever. But wanted to really talk about that. And you know, I think about when my dad passed 3 years ago, and I know, you know, people who still, you guys, who I have a really dear friend whose mom passed away 20-something years ago, and every birthday and every Mother's Day, she still has that same, maybe not the same level of grief, but um, that same sadness, you know what I mean? And it's just a very real subject. And so I'm going to really, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to toss it to Katrina right now and share, because Katrina is one of our sisters who just has dealt, and her family has dealt with ongoing grief and multiple deaths. And the crazy thing is, the thing that is inevitable is death is inevitable. None of us are here to stay, but we all know that letting go of people that we love is very difficult, and it puts us, it kind of helps us to think about our own mortality, you know what I mean? And it's a time of reflection for us. But Katrina, why don't you share kind of how you all have dealt with it? I'm going to come back and share the 5 stages of grief and loss in just a minute, but why don't we just go ahead and talk to you. You talk to us a little bit about how you and your family cope with the losses that you've had recently.
Well, Andrea, wow, you guys, and I'm sitting here in a Starbucks somewhere in America, as we do, so I pray that you can hear me good. Is my volume good? Yes. You know, I literally had to take my glasses off because I'm about to cry now. Right before getting on here, we are headed to Dallas tomorrow on our business trip, and one of the women who's traveling with us, her daughter just passed away at 4:39 this morning, and my mother is there consoling her. And so, I mean, it's just so raw. I haven't even had a moment to even reflect or call or comment. Just yesterday, I was at a funeral with a childhood friend. I'm 52, she's 52. She went in for an MRI and didn't come home. And she leaves a 31-year-old and a 12-year-old. And then last Tuesday was the loss of my aunt. And you guys, it's so real. We know life goes on. And as I often say, I think the quote that I got from, I've gotten so many great quotes per set that I've quoted it as I'm speaking at funerals and so forth. This one came after the passing of Miles Monroe. His son said at his funeral, God does not, he will not always explain himself, but he will reveal himself. And honestly, with the passing of my father, that first year, Andrea, you know, I mean, every day is different. The first year is so hard. And it does get easier, but it's never the healing process takes forever. And I can say that he has revealed himself constantly. I see, just so many different ways where the spirit of your loved one standing up inside of you. I feel my dad's strength so many times when I'm dealing with challenging situations. But y'all, we all can talk about this. Grief is real, and it's important. This is where friends come in, because I told you it was the force that stood around me during the passing of my father. I mean, my husband, we were newly married. He didn't even know how to tell me, and it was y'all who stood around me and told me while I was there in Detroit on a plane. And just last week, you guys were passing of my aunt, and it was so wonderful to see. And literally, to see you guys have a beautiful bouquet of flowers that was sent. I mean, I don't know how people do without God. I don't know how people do grief without friends. And so I'm just so grateful that you can see it's so real. The passing of a friend, especially when she's your own age, and you see her children, and you see her 9 brothers who stood up there. There were 13 of them, and 9 of her brothers were there, and the children. And her mother's face was so, these are the parents that birthed me into the kingdom. Bishop Jones and Mama Jones, they're like these spiritual parents. And I have never seen a blankness on her face like I saw, looking at her mom because the parent wants to bury her child. So that's, it's real, but you need girlfriends and girlfriends like we have. Friendship makes such a difference.
Wow. Yeah, this is heavy.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, Katrina, and while we feel your pain, the Bible says to rejoice with those who rejoice and to mourn with those who mourn. And, we can feel, I know I can feel your pain. And there's so much involved in death of a loved one. And, the planning of the services. First, just trying to get through grieving, but you have to move on, and somebody's got to step up and to be strong to take the lead and to be able to plan the services, and then to be able to clean the house and get rid of clothes. And I think about my dad's clothes that my mom just gave away to the Goodwill. And I have this picture of my dad right here on my computer. And it just sticks right there. And he's always looking at me. And, dividing up the estate and who gets what and all that kind of stuff. And it's just crazy, it is crazy. And so much, we have to take that time to grieve and to reflect. But sometimes it's hard because we have so many things that we have to do to prepare, And so I want to talk to you guys about the 5 stages of grief, and then I'm going to toss it to Chrisette to share a little bit. And definitely we want to hear from you guys. We'll talk a little bit about how to get help if you feel like you just are losing it, you know what I mean? And some resources and that type of thing. The 5 stages of grief and loss. And so there's an author named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote a book called On Death and Dying in 1969. And she talked about the 5 stages of grief and loss. And the first one is denial and isolation. It's just not even being able to believe it or really to accept that what you're hearing is real, okay? And then not wanting you're not taking anybody's calls, not wanting to be around anyone, going into isolation. And number 2 is anger. And a lot of times that anger is towards God. It's towards, maybe you lash out at people, maybe you have a sibling that wasn't around, and now now you have to deal with them coming to this service of a parent or whatever, and they usually throw down worse than anybody else. It's the ones that were never around and didn't do anything, the ones that want to climb in the casket and all that kind of stuff. But you have to deal with the anger that you feel towards God, maybe towards yourself, or maybe toward a sibling or someone that wasn't around when they needed to be, or when you felt they needed to be. The 3rd stage is bargaining, which is, you know, the if onlys. If only I had taken them to the doctor sooner. If only I would have moved them into my house with me. If only I, you know, did this, or if only I did that. Just kind of bargaining. And then number 4 is depression, and that's going into that sunken place where you don't feel like there's any reason to live on yourself. And then the final stage is acceptance. And through each of these stages, you guys, we really need to have girlfriends or people around us that love us, that can help us through these stages. And I'll be honest, these stages it's not always in this order. Sometimes anger comes before denial. Sometimes there's just acceptance, but then that anger comes after that because of, you know, or the bargaining. If I only, you know, when my dad passed, I had the blessing of being able to spend a lot of time with him because, you know, as having a home-based business, I was able to be there with him at all times. I didn't have anger. I didn't have all of those kind of things. But the one thing that I know is that I went through the if onlys. You know, if only he didn't have that surgery. You know, if only we would have known, you know, about his condition before it got so bad. And I remember being at the hospital saying, you know, God, once the doctors left and they told us all this stuff that was happening with him and that there was really nothing that they could do, I remember saying, God, I know that you can heal him on this side, but if you heal him and he has to live like this, then just take him home. And I had no regrets because I knew that I was there for my dad. I did everything for him. And every time he opened his eyes in the hospital room, I was there. And he would always look for me, always in the room so he saw me, and he would lock eyes on me because I was his baby. And so I was at acceptance fast. You know, I didn't have time for denial. It was real. It was happening. I was there. And so people grieve in different ways, you guys, and it's important to do so. It's important to do so. Not everybody's going to cry and scream and all of those type of things. Some people want to be around other people. They don't want to be by themselves. Some people, you know, want to, you know, go through family photo albums and that type of thing. You know, I remember crawling up in my dad's bed the night that took him because he was able to. We were able to have him at home. He didn't want to go to hospice. We were able to have him at home, and I crawled up in his bed that night, and I just slept on that one side of the bed, and that was just my way. You know, I was reconnecting with him for that last time. And so, anyway, so Chrisette, you just are coming through, and just talk to us a little bit about what you have and you and your family have dealt with, because it's different, but it's just as real.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm just listening to Katrina and listening to you, and you know, trying to hold back the tears because you know we've all experienced death, and you know, sometimes it's untimely, sometimes it's even tragic, sometimes it's a shocker, and then there are times when you're prepared for it because there's a progression. And I know that I've had to deal with, you know, all of them, you know, from my daughter who was born with a skin disorder, and we were praying that, you know, God would heal her, my third daughter, Kirsten, and just not understanding, you know, why she had to be born that way. So that was very, very challenging time in our lives, even, you know, and everybody deals with it differently. You know, my husband, he talks about it quite a lot. I mean, in sermons and, you know, when he's talking about, you know, times and families, how nobody gets to escape it. Nobody gets to escape it. But for me, you know, I really don't like to talk about it a whole lot, you know, and everybody is different. And so, you know, having that was, oh my goodness, that was very difficult, very challenging. But, you know, because I am a woman of faith, I just know in my heart of hearts, the way I deal with it is that God just does not put more on us than we can bear. And to me, in my life, that's probably been the most challenging and difficult thing that has happened. And then, you know, loss of a loved one, tragedies. You know, my brother was killed. And I mean, that one was like, oh my God. And, you know, I remember passing by one of the places that we would go to all the time, and I just absolutely lost it. So, you know, pain is real, grief is real, but what's important, as you said, Andrea, is that you have to go through all the stages. And, you know, I'll say God gave us tears, and He gave us tears because it's a way to release, it's a way to release all of that pent up sadness. And I truly believe that God is a God of all comfort. And so, you know, having friends is important because, you know, sometimes you may just need a friend to listen. You don't necessarily need them to, oh, it's going to be okay and all that. Sometimes you just want them to be there. And sometimes silence is golden. You know, I remember, you know, when I lost my daughter, there were times where I didn't want to be around crowds because I didn't want everybody coming up to me saying, oh, it's going to be okay, and hugging and all of that. And I knew their intentions were really, really well, but it just kept bringing it up. And so the more people do that with me, it just made me cry more, and, you know, it kind of upset me a little bit more. So, you know, and you have to understand everybody is different. Some people need all of that. They want, you know, to be around a whole lot of people. And for me, you know, be around a whole lot of people, but not necessarily talk about it. You know, I just want to kind of, you know, keep it going and not have to deal with it. But if we're talking about, you know, and so that's family. I mean, you know, my mother passed, I believe it's been like 5 years ago, and that was a long illness. So we were, my sisters and brothers, we were able to prepare, you know, for that, even though it happened a little sooner than we expected. So that wasn't all of a sudden. I think sometimes when our family members die and it's all of a sudden, it's a little bit more challenging because you weren't expecting it. You weren't talking to yourself on a regular basis saying, I see the signs, so I need to prepare myself for what's going to happen. So just recently, and those of you that follow us, and we didn't post it on the Force of Friendship Facebook page, but on my own personal page, I did just post that on this past Monday, we lost our furry family, which was Trip. And those of you who follow me know that I posted so many of his pictures, his shenanigans, his videos. And, you know, you know, if you were to ask me maybe about 20 years ago, I remember I had a friend of mine who had a little dog, and she called me one day and she was screaming on the phone, and I was like, oh my God, what happened? I thought that her mother had an accident, her sister. I was just like, oh my God, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she said her dog, she had pulled up, and before she had come to a complete stop, her dog had jumped out of the window and he had broke his leg, and the dog was crying. And when I tell you, she was crying hysterically. And I remember in that moment, and I'll testify, I said to myself, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're really losing it like that over a dog? I thought it was your mother. I thought, so at that point, you guys, I just didn't get it. I really didn't get it until I got a dog and got really attached. And I guess because I didn't have a pet at that time and didn't know how much you get attached to them and you love them. And one of the things about pets, especially dogs, is that they give you that unconditional love. You know, when I go out of town and come back home, Trip was always there, greeting me at the stairs, tail wagging, like, oh, my mama's home, I'm so excited. And he would jump on me, and he was just a big ball of joy, of love. And then, you know, my father who lives with me. He's 91 years old. That was his best friend, his companion. And I often said, he came and stole my dog. You know, before my father started living with me, it was all about me and Trip. Trip loved the ground that I walked on. Then my father moved in, and all of a sudden he switched from me to my dad. But I later found out it's because my dad was giving him all these midnight snacks, going to the kitchen. I didn't know anything about it. Going back to the room, 2 for me, 1 for you, Trip. 2 for me, 3 for you. And so I said, okay, I get it. I get it. Trip was loyal to the one that was feeding him the most snacks. But you guys, a couple of weeks ago, maybe about 3 weeks ago, we noticed some bleeding from his mouth. Long story short, found out that he had malignant melanoma, and tried to do everything we could to cure him if possible. Looked at all different kinds of things that we could do, from radiation to surgery, and none of them really panned out. So of course they had medicine, and we tried to do that to control some things. But at the end of the day, you know, we and family didn't want to be selfish, and you know, he was still looking pretty much the same and still had personality. We didn't want it to get to the point where he couldn't eat and that it would be a problem. So we decided to put him to sleep. And I'll tell you, it was one of the hardest things. And my girlfriends know me, I couldn't even, you know, really talk about it to them much, because the more you talk about the more real it became. And so I was just thinking, you know, God, you know, touch my dog. I mean, I'm praying him. I was praying for mama, praying for, you know, other people. Because what I know about God is that God is concerned about everything that concerns us. And so, you know, we had to put him to sleep. And when I tell you, I understand why at the vet and at the hospital, they have just boxes, Andrea, Katrina, of tissue everywhere. And I remember the first time I went there, I'm like, what? Do people come in here with a lot of colds, flus? Because they got tissues everywhere. And I promise you, they know, because when they tell their pet owners that their dog or cat or whatever the pet is, you know, there's nothing more that they can do, and that pet is going to die or needs to be put to sleep, I promise you, tears are rolling and no people are blowing their noses. And trust me, that was me. That was me. I was trying to be strong, hold it in, and I was like, oh, just forget it, let it out. And I did. So you guys, yeah, I totally agree, Andrea, with all of the 5 stages of grief. And again, you may not experience all of them, but definitely several of them I have experienced. But, you know, one of the things that, and I'm sure you're going to give this information now, is that we do have to be very careful, because there is a difference between mourning and grieving. And mourning, that's what the Bible says, we mourn with those who mourn, because mourning is for a season and for a time, but grieving can turn into so much more. And like, I still miss my mother. I still miss my daughter. I still miss my brother. I miss all of that. And if I think about it long enough, I could just tear up, cry, and literally turn my whole day upside down. And so, you know, learning how to think about them, the good things, and again, life goes on. Not that you ever forget about them, but you just have to be so careful, because I always say, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, if your day is just a blue day and you feel like standing in the bed, stop and think about what you're thinking about. And when you stop, think about what you're thinking about, you'll understand why you feel the way that you feel. But now that I understand that, I know, you know, as Philippians 4:8 say, you know, these are the things that you think on. So when I think of my mother, I think of the good things that she did and the funny things. When I think about my daughter, I think about, you know, how even in her short life, how beautiful she was. I think about my brother, you know, how well he could cook. And so while tears may stream, you can have tears and still have a smile. So, you know, again, you guys, it is such a blessing to have family and girlfriends that you can go through all of these emotions with, because trust me, they have gone through it as well. Andrea.
Right. Wow. That was so rich. So rich. Thank you for sharing. So rich and relevant. And thank you for your transparency, your vulnerability. I mean, this is a topic that I believe if everybody watching this ain't crying right now, okay, because they can relate, And so before I give some of the resources, Katrina, let me just ask you, what are some lessons that you think most people learn from loss, whether it's lessons about their own lives or whether it's lessons learned during the process? What are some lessons that we learned through dealing with loss of loved ones or whatever?
I just wanted to say to Chris knows that I'm one of the biggest dog people. And so, we say all dogs go to heaven. So my Fletcher was there to greet their trip. So they bounced around and get
having a good time, right?
So, yeah, and it was just so good. The important thing that I wanted to add is, number one, you must grieve. And number two, you must know everyone's grief is different. So it's not to judge one person's grief versus the other. But you have to know when you need help, because if your grieving becomes where you cannot live, that's one thing I've learned from my girlfriends. You can tell I'm in the Starbucks. One thing I've learned from my girlfriends is, help me. You have to take care of yourself. And so when your grieving gets to the point that you literally are just totally empty on the inside constantly, and it's going on and on and on, you have to get help. I have learned, number one, that my loved ones are still with me in spirit. We are mind, body, and spirit. And so I can pull on resources. I've learned that I know more than I think. Some of the things I totally would depend on my dad for, totally would depend on my aunt for. It's like, oh my gosh, I really can do that. You see strength. So many times I have literally felt, as I said earlier, I have felt my daddy stand me up and say, Trina, you carry that person's spirit. I've learned that for those of you that are dealing with maybe someone that's on hospice, I've learned that when someone is about to pass away, it's one of the purest times, and God gives them an opportunity to really pass the oil that they have carried down to you, to the next generation. And so it's an opportunity to, to be there and to get a blessing. And I've learned, you said no regrets, Andrea. I've learned the importance of no regrets. Flowers now, say your words now, healing now. Don't leave things undone. And, yes, we have technology like this, but sometimes you have to get on a plane, drive, go, take time out that you don't have, meet in the middle to keep things clean. Because I can honestly say no regrets. No regrets with my auntie, no regrets with my dad. And I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was, honestly. And I've learned that there's nothing like a good girlfriend. You can really tell your girlfriends. I remember when I was single, short version of it is I was wondering about this one guy, and they said, you know what, is he there with you? This visual about the happy life. That is there now. I said, yeah, I can totally see him there. Then she had me turn around and she said, you've just gotten in a car accident and now you are in the hospital. Is he there? And I said, no, he's not there. And I knew that right then he was not the home. So just like you want to have men in your life like that, your husband to be like that, your girlfriend. You want to have girlfriends that are coming through. Yeah, it's your girl when you are at the Essence Festival, but when you're at your lowest moment is your girlfriend. Those are the girlfriends that you want to have. My girlfriend who just passed away, her closest girlfriend, who's a close girlfriend to me, they were the ones that organized the entire service with her children. And those are kind of girlfriends. So I've learned some of the things I've learned.
Awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much. And so just for, as we close, just to give you some resources, and of course you can look these up yourself. One of the best resources, number one, is God. He is the source. He is our unlimited source, and he has ample supply of grace and mercy and comfort and love and anything that we need. He has all the answers. He really does. And so go to God, first of all, with everything, with how you're feeling. God, I'm mad. I'm mad at you. Okay. I mean, just go and be honest and be open, because he already knows, right? He already knows. And I remember being in a situation where I was just mad at him, and I cried and cried all night long. I didn't even really sleep. I just cried all night until my morning turned into singing. And I just ended up singing and singing and singing, and I just felt his peace, and it wasn't about loss, so to speak, but it was still just me seeking God, saying, God, I'm so mad at you. Why did you, put me in this place or in this situation or whatever? And so God is always our first resource. The second one is your pastor. If you have a pastor or a rabbi or, whoever, whatever your faith is, to go and seek some spiritual guidance, whether you have a pastor or a spiritual mom, deacon or elder, or somebody that you trust that has some training, hopefully, but or has some experience in loss and grieving and that type of thing, and that can give you some spiritual help and some insight on how to be able to comfort you. And then you can seek a grief counselor. Grief counselors, you can seek it through your insurance. A lot of times our insurance companies have grief counseling for us. You can get a referral from your doctor or from your pastor or anything like that for a grief counselor. And then there's support groups. There are support groups for people who have gone through loss, whether it's tragic or, even if you have someone who had through hospice care. Hospice has a great support group, and they kind of keep up with you if you lost a parent through the death of an illness or some type of terminal disease. So there are support groups. And then, of course, family and friends. Family and friends are bar none. But like Chrisette said, you want people that are around you that are not just, sometimes people don't know what to say.
Right.
And be okay with the fact that their heart is in the right place, like she said. But make sure that the people that are around you can pray you through, can talk you through, and maybe they just need to go get you some cookies and cream, ice cream, and a good movie from the Red Box, and y'all just veg out on the couch, right? I mean, that's the kind of girlfriend I want, okay?
Right.
So get me a tub of ice cream. And then lastly, there are books that you can read if you're a reader, and that's something that can be ongoing, where you might not go through grief counseling for the rest of your life, but you can always read books. And again, this book is On Death and Dying, and it's by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and that's Elizabeth with an S, E-L-I-S, and not E-I-L-Z. Yeah. Okay. And so we'll post it. We'll post a link, and you guys, I want to. Yes. Go ahead and wrap up, Katrina. After
I was with Zig Ziglar, famous motivational speaker, and he lost his daughter. I never knew, but he was one of the most positive people. I mean, just most positive people in the world. But he lost his daughter, and he wrote a book called Confessions of a Grieving Christian. I had an opportunity to be with him. Just one-on-one, and it's not in print anymore, but you can find it on Amazon still. It's a really good book, Confessions of a Grieving Christian, on how to still have a positive life, and life goes on. So that's just another thing. We'll post that one too.
Awesome. That is excellent. Thank you guys so much. I love y'all. And
share and let us know how you cope with grief. Be sure to continue to follow us for Friendship Fridays, and we appreciate you guys. Love you.
Love you. Bye-bye.